excited to be back on stage with the incredible, wonderful panelists we have here. And thank you so much to everyone here who is sticked around. Just by a show of hands, who's excited for this panel? I want to feel the energy from everyone over there. Hands up, come on, a few hands up. Yes, there we go, I see hands up. Okay, great, fantastic. So super excited to introduce my fellow panelists. Very honored to be sitting with you here on stage. I'll introduce Nicholas first. Nicholas Ponart. Ponart is the Managing Director of EWTP Saudi Arabia. Thank you so much for being with us today. And a warm welcome. And to Essam Albakr, the CEO and founder of Ejada Investment. Thank you so much for being here again. Nicholas, I'd love to start with you. You're in the private equity space. I would love you to tell us all a little bit more about the work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you for that very warm welcome. Maybe I start a bit on a personal note to tie in my history and what we do here in the kingdom. In my case, I was born in Europe, but I was educated in the US, and this was sort of the late 90s. So as a young student, I wanted to get into the first internet wave, being in Silicon Valley. That was the late 90s. So I was on the tip end of that, but then I think I was excited about the bigger story. I thought at that time was really the rise of Asia and China in particular. So I went over to China in 2001 with what at that time was called Siemens Venture Capital, investing into startups in Asia. And at that point of time, the Chinese market, in terms of VC, was, I remember, about $200 million, $300 million invested per year, compared to now 60, 70 billion or so, give or take, per year. So I really had the fortune of getting into the industry and getting exposure and really being part of the China growth story. And over the years, I would say, starting from 2015 onwards, right, what we started to see in China was, the market was saturating. A lot of the Chinese companies, of course, have built scale, especially in consumer tech, to a lesser extent in those days in B2B, but what we've seen also now over the last few years in industrial technology, energy transition, Chinese companies are leading players. And on the other hand, then when we looked around the world and looking for what markets or where could these companies contribute and grow over time, it wasn't clear, I would say, in 2015 and 16, but over the years we were very intrigued what was going on in the region, particularly here in the kingdom, and we felt that there would be a very strong complementary fit, both in terms of what the let's call it maybe some of the gaps in the value chains here, and some of the contributions we can make to the ecosystem as a whole by really helping these Asian companies to grow and to help them to come into this market and contribute to the developments here. So that's a bit about the background. So what we do in essence is really to both fund, but also bridge these companies from Asia to the region, right? And we've been doing that now for 4 years. And we'll talk to you more about the details, but yeah.
Absolutely. And just as a follow-up, so where did you travel from? Was it in China specifically? Do you live there today?
No, we live here. We have a team of 20 people here in the kingdom since 2019.
Wow,
I've been here for 2 years, but we very much see ourselves as being, to the extent we want to localize, right? We want to be based here. We manage primarily regional capital from here. We're the custodian of the capital here. We don't represent any party in Asia, but rather we want to, of course, help those companies to expand, but really to leverage and utilize their capabilities to make a contribution here.
Fantastic, fantastic. Essam, it's a pleasure to have you with us as well. I know you are a man of many talents, and you have spearheaded and founded an incredibly, very successful firm. Can you tell us a little bit more about Ejada and why you started it?
Well, thank you very much for having me. Succinctly, I'll just kind of like summarize my career that spans a little bit over 26, 27 years, starting in the 90s in IT, which evolved later on in advisory and arranging, and also fund management. For the last at least 10 years, very much been entrenched in the local ecosystem, preceding what we see today, a vibrant ecosystem. We were part of the Business Youth Committee and also the SME Development Committee within the Chamber of Commerce that started the Angel Network. Today, I founded both Ejada Capital and Ejada Investment. Both are distinctly different areas of specialty. And what I am speaking today about is Ejada Investment, which basically focuses primarily on VC. It's two different strategies, single transaction and early stage. So with the work and the partnership that we have with various international fund managers, we look specifically at the region and Saudi, and we look at opportunities coming from primarily Eastern Europe, Central Europe, and how we can help soft land them in Saudi and scale them. Saudi represents the largest market, or the 7th largest public equities market, which basically opens the gateways for a lot of companies aspiring to scale and even exit. So we see it as a primary cornerstone in our strategy going forward. Needless to say, our work also involves other areas of advisory, which we help in primarily fundraising and leading some of the rounds, and also strategically positioning some of the companies.
Amazing. Sounds like you're incredibly busy with 2 investment strategies at Ejada Investment in addition to Ejada Capital. I'll come back to you with some questions on that, but fantastic. Nicholas, I'll go back to you. I'm interested to know, and for everyone here listening as well, so what specific kinds of companies do you work with in Asia? And you know, what's the vision in bringing them here to the Middle East and Saudi specific? Can you tell us a little bit more about that and that process?
Sure. I think the starting point, going to back what I said a bit earlier, is really to see, you know, where can we contribute, right? And we think in the local ecosystems, there are areas where there will be local companies that can develop and emerge, and there could be regional companies from the region. And there's other sectors where we think that if you have a company that has proven their technology at scale, they have done so in one of the largest end-user markets in the world, you know, those are the companies where we can really make an impact here, right? So it tends to be things where, you know, we have this match of, let's call it, you know, skill sets or attributes, and that would be certainly digital technologies, energy transition in industrial space. So that's what we focus on. And it's really to create, you know, a positive feedback loop where the investments we can make can also contribute, you know, to the development of the ecosystem. And I can give you one example. For instance, you probably have come across Saudi Cloud here, which is building the, you know, both the public and the government infrastructure on the cloud services. That is, you know, a very capital intensive, takes a long time to develop by yourself. And we brought in Alibaba together with our fund in STC to launch that venture. And now with that infrastructure in place, then you will have other participants in the ecosystem, whether it's vertical solutions, horizontal solutions, that can benefit from that infrastructure piece. So that's sort of how we feel we can also, you know, be a catalyst for some of the local startups to benefit of the work we do. Absolutely
amazing. We'll come to you then with any recommendations that I come across that I think that you could greatly impact. Essam, I'll spear it back to you. I'm interested to know, you work with companies looking to expand and grow every day. You fund them, you help them, you know, maybe find new markets. What have you found to be maybe the most challenging thing that scale-ups essentially face when they're looking to scale? And really, really great entrepreneurs, how do they overcome that?
Well, I mean, I've always had, to be honest, reservation over some of the deal flows in Saudi or the quality of them. unfortunately, we've always had, I call it the copycat syndrome of most of the entrepreneurs, and I'm not generalizing, I'm not saying that all of them, but they would have this tendency of, doing what others are doing and emulating them. I think one thing that I find that the market lacks is really disruptive technology. Disruptive technology, you're talking about deep tech, AI, cybersecurity. What we see primarily, the apps that we see, it's very much e-commerce, delivery, et cetera, et cetera. What we're seeing today is, and what we're trying to build is more of a conduit of really bringing some of these disruptive technologies, these entrepreneurs that really believe in the message of what is Vision 2030, of really having the ecosystem that allows for any entrepreneur, from any creed, from any race, from anywhere, to come and set up shop here, scale, and really benefit from what this market. You have a very strong economy, high penetration of technology, the largest utilization of technology, a young generation, high disposable income, a huge public equities market, which allows for small cap companies to really flourish and even exit on NMO, which is the small cap index. I think one thing that we're seeing, and this is really due to the successful IPOs of some of the Saudi unicorns that really send out this strong message to every aspiring entrepreneur within the MENA region and elsewhere to really think seriously about relocating and coming to this market. The market allows for the scalability that other small economies within the region have or probably lack. And most of the companies that we see today, at least the entrepreneurs and the startups, really not having a grasp of what investors are looking. Investors look for two things. You got to sell them a message. One, the cost of entry and the exit story. And most of what we see is a little bit of overvaluation, which...
Or a lot bit of that, or a lot of that.
And unfortunately, we're seeing that hitting more of a stagnation wall, that we're seeing some of these companies struggling to really justify such a valuation. This is very common. This is a very nascent market. We haven't even reached the J-curve when it comes to the lifespan of an ecosystem. I think it's a little bit hasty to compare ourselves with much mature markets, especially in the West or in North America. I think there's a lot of good stories, but it's good that we hear a lot about the failures. From failure stems success. You cannot, we haven't reached what others have reached so far in the way they look at failure, especially, what makes the US such a flourishing ecosystem is they celebrate failure. They allow for failure to happen, which basically from that you have the success of most of these companies. There is a lot of aspiring. You see a lot of great ideas, great entrepreneurs, but in 100, you're seeing probably less than 10% that will ever see the light or will see a late stage success. And this is very healthy for an ecosystem. You have to have that. You cannot have all successful stories. You want everyone to learn from others' failures.
There are so many things you touched upon that I absolutely love. I mean, how you touched upon how valuations are through the roof and how you want to see more in-depth tech development with the companies that you're looking at. And I'm going to come back to you in just a moment with follow-up questions in that regards. But Nicholas, I would love to, kind of go back with you. So you mentioned very early on that your firm not only invests, but actually plays a pivotal and critical role in bringing all these different companies from Asia here to Saudi and different parts of MENA. I'm interested to know, when you're looking to invest, when you're looking to evaluate these companies, what are the key metrics that you look for to say, you know what, we're going to invest. We believe this is going to be a potential winner. We have conviction as a team.
Look, I think, and maybe also echoing a bit of your observations, right? When you do a growth strategy in an emerging market versus a developed market, you have to do things slightly differently, right? And I think in a developed market, it's sort of a numbers game. You will, whatever metrics you want to pull out, and you can, benchmark companies on that basis, and then it's a pricing exercise, who gets into the deals on what price, right? I think the work we do, and it sounds in many ways but perhaps in more early stage companies, what it means for us is it's more like, in a way, being a bit of a business builder in this ecosystem. And to your question then of how you assess these companies, I think it comes down to a couple of key things. One thing is, if you look at a company in another market, number one, we want them to be a market leader in their home market. It's hard enough to expand or to scale a startup. To take one startup from one region into another market, you get double the risk, right? So one thing is certainly to have a scale and a proven positioning in your home market, but then it's also about, not all of these companies or these products or technologies is going to be successful here, right? You have to, normally as a growth stage investor, you don't have to, be too concerned about product market fit, but a lot of work we do is to really see what of these products could fill a need here, and what do we need to do to localize them or build a team around this to, again, make it a unique value proposition for what is needed here, but maybe leveraging some of the work that has been done in other markets, right? So that's one piece of it. And then I think the third piece, in the venture space, you always talk about, assessment of the founder and the team. And we certainly do a lot of that work, but for us, it's also a matter of having commitment, right? Because these things will not work if you sit in Silicon Valley or sit in Beijing and you say, I'll send one of my guys over and he will open up some accounts. And, in today's world, these local technology ecosystems have to be localized. And it also means that you need to both then contribute manpower, commitment also typically will request, the companies we work with to also invest here with us locally.
Fantastic. I have a quick follow-up for you before I spearhead back to Essam. I'm essentially interested to know, what about culture? So how do you play that culture fit? Is it you working closely, since you're on the ground here, with those international companies looking to come here to market and scale, informing them, educating? How much of it is that versus they already have a plan, they've already studied it? Can you tell us a little bit more about that culture fit when a company goes into a new market like Saudi?
This I think is probably the biggest, let's call it, risk for what we do, because these things are intangible. And it's not, nobody tells you that can go into a different country in a market. I've been in China for 20 years. If you ask me, can I build a successful company in China? It's possible, but do I have a better chance than the local guys? No. And I think that applies across the border. So that is a factor. I think the way we try to address that, one is we typically do not fund other people's business plans in the sense that, they're going to build something here. The way we like to do it is we work with local counterparties. It might be a local entrepreneurial team, a family, a larger player, and then we together identify the need, and then we go and source the product and the technology. So in that way, we kind of still base it on the competence and the experience and the human capital here.
Fantastic. I love that. Essam, I'm going to head back to you. You mentioned so many rich things the last time you had the microphone in your hand. And so I want to follow up on a few of those things. So, for example, you were mentioning the high valuations, the lack of deep tech development in the ecosystem, the importance of raising more awareness and celebrating failures. And you also previously mentioned that you also invest early stage. And getting those right early stage founders right, picking the right startups early stage plays a pivotal role in who ends up scaling later. I'm wondering a little bit more about your investment strategy early stage and how that plays a role in the later success stories that we see, in minimizing failures, having better tech, good valuations, kind of educating these early founders.
Let me give you one strategy which very much has been developing in the last 6 to 12 months. Gaming. So why gaming? Why Saudi? Saudi has probably the largest investment gaming company in the world, which basically has changed the investment compass when it comes to most of aspiring entrepreneurs setting up their gaming companies and looking at Saudi as more of the center of gravity when it comes to gaming. With the emergence of Savvy, it allows for aspiring entrepreneurs who are very much invested in the gaming. The gaming industry is a huge industry around the world. And to have such a radical way of really capturing the attention is you're making Saudi the center for investment in gaming. We see that as a very promising strategy, at least for the next 5 to 10 years. What we look for, I've always looked at opportunities, especially if I look at Europe, I'll look specifically at Eastern Europe, Central Europe. This is really where the bedrock of innovation stems for when it comes to the greater Europe, and even that spills over into the US. We're trying to sell the message of what is Saudi today, because they hear so much. A lot of people don't understand what is Vision 2030. What does it entail? And, I took it upon myself, at least for the last 3 to 4 years, sitting on panels and podiums, really clarifying what is the message. What is the message for the natives, and for the people who take Saudi as their home, their second home, and the ones that are aspiring, to look at building their business and establishing it in a thriving market. So what I have, and this is recently I've done probably in the last 2 months, I was visiting a lot of ecosystems within Central Europe and Eastern Europe, from Slovakia, Slovenia, Serbia, and elsewhere. You'll be astonished of what most of these ecosystems have been able to produce, and they're just waiting for people to come and investors to pluck these investments and bring them. So what we have taken upon ourselves is really to build this conduit of attracting a lot of these. And I'm not talking about specifically about that geographical region. When you look at North Africa, especially Egypt, amazing entrepreneurs. When you look at the Levant, a lot of great entrepreneurs and ideas comes out of Jordan, and also somewhere within the GCC, like Dubai and Abu Dhabi, which a lot of entrepreneurs have set up. So what we look at the commitment of the founders. Are they really committed? Not every founder of a company is a manager or a business manager. They would lack a lot of the skills that allows them to manage a proper company, but they're very good in what they do. All right. A lot of the entrepreneurs, they shy away from admitting their failure in the past, which is very wrong.
Are you good at knowing, like off a few, meetings with them?
I can tell you what I've learned from other people when entrepreneurs pitch them. A lot of the entrepreneurs, they really tailor a script that is so perfect that, you know, you would be lured not to hesitate in really looking at the deck and probably doing a high-level due diligence. But any realistic, any smart investor will ask the right questions of, tell me, how many times have you failed? Okay, you know, I failed a lot, all right? But you said something earlier in the previous session, always say no to the ones that tell you no. And what is that supposed to mean? That means that even if I failed, it is a proud way of saying that, yes, I did fail, but I learned from the failure. But I was able to stand up again and really go after the ideas. 90% of what we take for granted today and what we use, as far as devices, as far as anything that we use in our daily life, came out of failure exercises. And we've always had this habit and took for granted of everything that is ready-made and it comes to us. You're sitting right now in an economy that is trying to transform itself. It takes decades for nations to do what we're trying to do in a decade.
And we've already been successful on many fronts, but yeah, I think that's super interesting. I agree with you on multiple points. I love the Peter Thiel from 0 to 1. Most of us are executing 1 to N, and I would love to finish and come back to you on these, but I will have to come back to Nicholas. I'm interested to learn more and kind of just, you know, building off the conversation, building off on Essam's thoughts about the market and, you know, its challenges and how we're growing at a rapid pace. What about for you when you conduct due diligence on companies, whether it's, you know, bringing them here to the region? What do you specifically look for? What are the red flags that are immediate to you where you say, I don't know, I'm not so sure, you know, maybe they're fibbing, maybe they're not giving me all the information I need. What does your due diligence process essentially look like?
Well, I think also it's a bit picking up on your observations, right? I think in the traditional venture kind of dynamic, it is sort of questioning the founders on their both their intent, aspirations, and how they intend to execute what they're trying to build. I think when you're, like we are dealing in your case maybe with Europe, in my case more with Asia, I think what we've seen 3 years ago was it's almost impossible to get people to come here. So they had no perception, whatever perception they had, arguably was very skewed depending on where they got their information. Now we do have people knocking on our door every day a week. We have all these delegations coming. They will meet some people, collect some business cards. They, will sing the gospel of how good they are and how they, But at the end of the day, I think it comes down to the same dynamics of, what really is your intent? How are you really going to make this work? What commitments are you making as an organization and as individuals? Because in the end of the day, these companies are not, multinationals, right? They are run by entrepreneurs that, in many cases, we want to see them to be based here as well, right? So I think, we do all the usual stuff that any venture investor would do, but I think that's what makes maybe it's different in the kind of model that we pursue.
But intention, just as a follow-up, how do you really see that through? How do you extract that kind of information? What do those conversations look like essentially with those founders to really evaluate their intention?
Well, I think it comes down to the issues of, as I said, are they willing to relocate here? Are they hiring locals? Are they, putting cash, the skin in the game, so to speak, right? Are they willing to have their technologies not being used sort of on a reseller model, but to inject the IP? These are things which are, manifestations of an intent, right? As opposed to just, let's call it verbal, display of intent.
Fantastic. I'll end it with one final question for each of you. Since you guys are both incredibly talented individuals that work across markets, you meet companies from all walks of life in different countries, I want one piece of advice from each of you for any local company here in Saudi looking to scale into a new market, or vice versa, for any international companies that might be here with us in the room that are looking to come to Saudi. What piece of advice would you have to those individuals? Whoever wants to go first. Nicholas, I guess it's
I don't
you.
want to parrot myself, but I do think it's sort of, an entrepreneurial, I think, for any market is really to be, let's call it, you spoke about leaning in or being fully committed or really, you cannot, it's not a day job, right? It's something that you breathe and you live with and you manifest through everything you do. And I think when it then becomes a cross-border thing, it's the same thing. I mean, it took me 20 years to learn Chinese. My Arabic is still, mediocre, but hopefully in the next 10 years I'll get there. But I think it's those things, right? You have to really just immerse yourself. And I think that's the advice I would say to entrepreneurs that want to do those cross-border journeys as well.
Fantastic. And then Essam and I can help you with the Arabic a little bit too.
I think, especially this economy or this country, you can really survive by not knowing Arabic. It's very easy to live, thrive, operate. But, I mean, I would always be cognizant of really explaining to anyone who wants to relocate here to be more open to the culture, to what is the unique characteristics of this very diverse country, from north to east and south to west. Saudi Arabia is not Riyadh. Saudi Arabia is not Jeddah. Saudi Arabia is not Eastern Province or Khobar. It is a vast country with different topographies and different dialects and culture. It's a very rich nation with its culture and with its history and future aspiration and determination. We have two great milestones that we are looking forward to. We have Expo, we have the World Cup. I think we see a drive towards meeting some of the KPIs for making these two events at least successful. I think for every entrepreneur, business person, and I really always advise a lot of companies. I sit on boards, especially the ones from outside. Don't parachute yourself here out of convenient. Doesn't work. People can see through that. You really want to commit, you got to have boots on the ground. Otherwise, no one is going to take you seriously. Really trying to make a difference and trying to make a mark in this market and have a breakthrough, you have to have commitment. You cannot remote manage this market from Dubai or from anywhere else. It doesn't work. I mean, and this applies for anyone, whether it's multinational, large corporation, or even small time. If you're committed, make the leap. I think it is absolutely rewarding. I see more Hollywood faces here than I see anywhere else. I mean, I see more famous sport players here than anywhere else. I think we're living through a very unique transformation. You have a very progressive leadership that really sees the future and rallies everyone around it. And this is smart leadership.
Right.
And I mean, you can take that on a smaller scale on corporations and companies. I mean, you have to encourage innovation. You have to encourage mistakes. We've grown, unfortunately, in the past in a society where, we used to always kind of like demonize and look down at anyone making mistakes or anyone failing and so on and so forth. These should be from the past. I mean, you're looking at what this country is. It's a G20 economy. It is, it's surpassing $1.3 trillion in GDP. These are numbers. When you add them up, they equal potential to any industry.
Not only potential, I would argue, but concrete facts of the current success already being placed. Thank you so much, Essam. Nicholas, thank you as well
you.
for that vibrant discussion. Our incredible audience, we hope you enjoyed that. I hope you feel replenished, inspired, rejuvenated by this conversation. So I thank you both so much for your time. And I hope we can have another conversation in about a year and where we can see where Saudi and our impact together has brought us to date since then. So thank you both so very much.
Thank you.